What? Fuck me. T9, what is it on this? Can you hear me, Tanisha? Okay. I got scared for a second that I had inadvertently sent out 2 different Zoom links.
Oh, no.
But I don't think I did because people are in here.
Yep. I think you were good to go.
Did they give you a little reprieve from being at the Capitol?
We had committee this morning and then we ran over back here because Nicole has salt. So yeah, tomorrow's one of the deadlines. So it's kind of chaotic right now.
I used to think I wanted to do government relations work until I saw what all they did and I was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. The people who can do it their whole career, I have a lot of respect for, because I've warned Nicole, I was like, I got maybe 5 to 10 years left. And then I'm going to go sit in a policy world and not be front facing as much. Because it's a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll give it maybe 5 minutes. This is
Cool.
A weirdly small group so far today. Let me make sure everything is okay.
Yeah, good call. There's people trying to get on the teams.
Yeah, I see Sarah trying to do it.
Can you take the Teams meeting off of the calendar invite, because Teams automatically pops up a reminder with the link to click on, and that's why it keeps throwing some of us for a loop, I think.
So I don't know. When I initially started it, it did not start as a Teams meeting, and at some point it did, and I can't edit it out of being a Teams meeting.
Whoever, did you set the calendar? Because you can go in there and delete it.
You can delete
The Teams part, yeah.
Am I crazy? I've never seen that. I've never figured out how to do that before. Edit series.
Oh, my office manager is saying that I'm the one that's crazy and that you have to get rid of the calendar invite and start fresh.
Yeah. And so that's what I did when I first sent it out. I said, no, not a Teams meeting, right? Because it's a little toggle. But then at some point, it goes to a Teams meeting, and you can't undo it. So yeah, I might have to just redo that.
You could edit it in the series.
I don't know how. I mean, maybe, but
yeah,
whenever
Lucia says you can't. So
okay.
Once it gets on there, he's saying he started it without it and it added it to it later.
We'll have our IT people.
there's a, anyway, sorry about that.
No, it's no worries. I know it's
It just throws, it pops up and throws me for a loop every darn time.
oh yeah.
Gotta love technology.
It's great. All right, so we'll again we'll wait just a couple minutes and then we'll get started. I sent out the agenda, so we're gonna have some legislative updates from Tanisha, some stuff about the EOs. Then we'll get some kind of partner updates. We'll ask state agencies if they have updates. Or any of the stakeholders. We'll talk a little bit about an on-farm program from the Oregon Department of Agriculture. We want to spend some time today talking about how some of the wins we've had for development with the tax credit. And then we'll wrap up to talk about the survey that I sent out, and I'll resend it out, as well as the kind of the discussion, the ongoing discussion of this facilitation group. So yeah, we'll just give it another minute. And oh yeah, Karen, please.
Tim, could we take a moment at the outset for each person to introduce themselves and say their organization? Because we can't see on the screen some folks and the people on the phone. It would be good to know who's here.
Yeah, why don't we we'll have everyone who's a state agency person kind of goes. I'll kick it off. I'm Tim Aaron Macias with OHCS. Yeah, Tanisha, do you want to go?
Hi, Tanisha Rosas, she, her pronouns, OHCS government relations, focusing on the affordable rental housing side, including the ag worker housing tax credit.
Awesome, thank you. Barbara, do you want to introduce yourself and who you are, who you're with?
Good morning. I'm Barbara Anderson. I'm the new ombuds for Oregon workers. I took the place of Jennifer Flood.
Awesome. Martin, do you want to go?
Howdy all. Martin Jarvis, OHCS, State Tax Credits Program Analyst.
Excellent. Sunny, do you want to introduce yourself and who you're with?
You bet. Good morning. Sunny Summers. I'm a senior policy advisor with the Oregon Department of Agriculture. Good to see everybody.
Awesome. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself and who you're with?
Hi, Michael Sterner. I am the Fair Housing Enforcement Manager at BOLI, Bureau of Labor and Industries. Thanks.
Excellent. Maria.
Are you asking Maria Castro? I had to look now because everywhere I go, there is plenty of Marias, which makes me really happy, but it gets very confusing. So good morning, everyone. Maria Elena Castro. I use she, her, ella pronouns, and I am a Health Equity Innovation and Implementation Manager at the Equity and Inclusion Division of the Oregon Health Authority. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Nice to see you. And then let's go with Angelica. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, Angelica Martinez with OHCS. Brand new to affordable housing. I will be listening, and I'm in the capacity building, and I use she, her pronouns.
Awesome. I think that's everyone from the state, which I think are the ones you wanted to hear from, Karen. So yeah, why don't you?
No, I want to hear from everybody who's on the call.
Oh, you want to hear from everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Nicole.
Good morning, Nicole Mann. I'm here representing the Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers.
Awesome. Doak.
Hi, I'm Mike Doak, Executive Director of Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers. We have 440 pre-fruit growers in our membership.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Peter.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Hainley, Executive Director, CASA of Oregon. He, him.
Excellent. Let's see who's next on my list. Lori.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Hafer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm with the Farm Worker Program at Legal Aid Services of Oregon.
All right. Jenny.
Sorry, that took me a bit. I'm in the Capitol. Jenny Dressler. I represent the Oregon Farm Bureau Federation at this table. I believe Lauren Kenzie from Oregon Farm Bureau will also be joining today's call. I'm a contract lobbyist. Thank you.
Awesome. Martha.
Hi, everybody. Marta Sonato with the Oregon Law Center, and I use she, her pronouns.
Excellent. Meg.
Good morning, everybody. Maria Elena Guerra, Executive Director for the Farm Worker Housing Development Corporation, pronounced she, her, ella.
Excellent. And then I think we have someone on the line. Whoever's on the phone, do you want to introduce yourself? If not, that's fine.
Hey, Tim, it's Sarah Rue with Oregon OSHA. I'm excited to be here. I need to jump off for a few minutes, but I'll be listening in the background and I'll join y'all in just a bit.
Awesome. Yes, my apologies. I didn't think you'd be jumping on your phone. Excellent. So that is everybody.
I'm Karen Shawcross, her pronouns, retired Executive Director of Vienna Star.
My apologies, Karen. That is, I'm so excited to go through everyone. I forgot the person who made the suggestion. Awesome. So thank you all for joining us today. As I mentioned, we've got a couple things we want to discuss, but to lead us off is Tanisha, who's going to provide some kind of legislative updates for all of you.
Hi, again, this is Tanisha. The Oregon legislature is moving session along like normal. The first of the major bill moving deadlines is tomorrow. They have to schedule work sessions in order for a bill to keep going. And a work session is when the committees that the bills are heard discuss and vote on the bill. So I wanted to specifically address the sunset bills that have been moving relating to the ag worker housing tax credit and kind of clarify OHCS's roles in those bills, but also kind of explain what those bills are. So there are two bills relating to the ag worker housing tax credit, and that is Senate Bill 132 and House Bill 2078. And both of those bills were Legislative Research Office put forward bills that were filed on behalf of the Senate Interim Committee on Finance and Revenue and the House Committee on Finance, Interim Committee on Finance and Revenue. So these are committee bills and they're moving through the process as such. OHCS can only have positions on bills that the governor has a position on, and the governor has not put a position on this bill, but OHCS has been in contact with the committees as these bills are moving through to provide background resources and information and answer questions as necessary. The only time OHCS has been asked to be in the room was the Senate Natural Resources hearing on the 13th of February, and that was on the Senate Bill 132. So why these bills came up earlier than normal, because the sunset was going to be 2026 and this is from the mouth of the people who put forward the bill, is to ensure the longevity of the tax credit for developers who are currently going after these tax credits. So it's just to make sure that the market knows this is going to be there. It is very much just almost a measure of goodwill to put forward these bills earlier rather than later. That way, housing is a priority for almost everyone at the legislature, including ag worker housing. And so this is just to make sure that these resources are available and put forward longer. And so right now, both bills are currently in the joint tax expenditure bills or committee. I have been talking to the committee staff and we are on deck when necessary. We will be in the room to answer questions. They are still trying to, in the heat of the moment and everything else moving towards tomorrow deadline, that's all working. And so we are definitely on deck for them to be able to ask questions, but there should be no concern of this bill moving forward. This is very much just another way, an easy way for the legislature to put housing at the forefront and continuing to make it a priority for this state. And so I just wanted to alleviate any concerns. And then also I put my email in the chat. If y'all have any questions relating to session as things move on, always feel free that you can reach out to me around these bills or any bills relating to housing. And again, OHCS can't support or oppose anything, but we're here for technical advice and questions and logistics. So just wanting to put that out there for y'all guys. And if y'all have any questions, let me know. Ooh. Yes, it's definitely a rebalance of all the tax credits, but very much within normal protocol for the legislature at this time. They're just doing a quick deep dive, but Peter is right.
Awesome. So while we have you, are there any questions about that process or what kicked it off, or anything along those lines? If not, I think it's kind of related, but can you tell us what the status of the governor's EO funding request is? I think there's been some amendments. It's kind of expanded and kind of where's that in the process?
Yes, so House Bill 2001 and House Bill 5019 passed the House yesterday. So now they're moving over to the Senate. There's definitely members are having conversations, and I would always encourage you to look out for amendments, but there are some specific ag housing resources that have been funded, not relating to OHCS. They are through, I think, currently with Business Oregon, but again, amendments can change everything. So I would encourage y'all to look after that, but those are moving and it's on the Senate side, so should be ready to go for a hearing. I know there's a lot of people putting pressure on committee chairs to move these bills fast, and so that's where they are. So and first reading in the Senate, Senate bills happened yesterday. They were put on the list yesterday, so they should be able to move to committee fairly quickly after that. And I'll put those bill numbers in the chat.
Awesome. So yeah, are there any kind of questions about that, about the process, about the money? And I'm going to touch on the kind of on-farm funding that Tanisha mentioned in that bill. I know Sunny is from ODA, but I don't think there's a ton to share on that right now, other than yeah, maybe I'll kind of mess with the order of operations. Oh yeah, Nicole, please.
Thanks. Relating to the tax credit sunset extension, are you guys planning to change anything in regards to how the tax credit is operating currently based on the extension happening earlier than we would have thought? Or are you thinking that the tax credit will remain in operation as it has been?
I'll let Martin field that one.
Yeah.
Please repeat the question.
Sure. I was asking regarding to the tax credit, with the extension of the tax credit sunset happening a little bit earlier than was anticipated. Are you guys thinking of changing the way that the tax credit operates, or are you going to remain operating and dispensing the tax credits as you have been?
That's an excellent question. As of now, we have no plans to change how we currently allocate the credits. That is subject to change, obviously, if anything from the legislature happens, but currently the way we have been issuing the credits, reserving them through application, will remain the same. I know there is going to be some discussion over whether or not we continue to release the community-based credits through the small projects NOFA. That has not yet been determined. That's still an internal conversation, and we are looking forward to getting receiving input from all of our sponsors.
Yeah, Meg, please.
Thank you, Martin, for the clarification. That was exactly my question, because I have here directly from Roberto and Natasha that the NOFA, the farm worker tax credits are going to be moving out from the small NOFA to as a standalone as it used to be, because it's detrimental for us producers of farm worker housing that there is part of, at this point, they are part of the small NOFA. But thank you for your clarification. Hopefully we don't have to put this in the bill that is moving on. I don't really know if we should push for that. So you guys have kind of like a better way of do this easily internally. Can you give us some advice about that?
So if you've received assurances from Natasha that we will be moving away from including the ag worker housing tax credits in the small projects NOFA, then that will be the case. That has not yet been told to me directly, but once that has been clarified, I am more than happy to return to the usual application process going forward after this year, of course.
Awesome. Martha, please.
Yeah, so my question was in regards to the $5 million investment towards on-farm housing. I am curious, and maybe this is a question for Sunny from ODA, but I'm curious. So the Oregon Department of Agriculture is the one who would be in charge of providing the grants, and who, like, where would this grant program live within the agency, and like who's the lead person, who just curious about that aspect.
Yeah, good morning again. We don't know the answers to your questions. We do not have a grant department, so it's likely it would come into the director's office, because that's where a lot of like special projects, ODAP, the disaster assistance program, ended up in the director's office. But we don't have anybody identified as a lead on that at this point, because that's not something we normally do. We're hoping to get a grants office, because we have a lot of these kind of things coming at us, and having a coordinated effort towards that would be wonderful. But at this point, if it were to pass, it would likely be in the director's office, and myself or somebody more likely hired new would be put in charge of that program.
Got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to offer up, I know here at OHCS, or even in this facilitation team, if the Department of Ag ever wants to come kind of discuss or lean on the expertise of this group, I think everyone is more than willing to provide insight or thoughts or guidance or policy recommendations. So I know when I met Jonathan, I kind of extended that offer as well. So yeah, awesome. So yeah, that kind of covers that piece. I think, yeah, at the end of the day, everyone's just kind of waiting for that, for all these bills to pass and become real things before anything is done. Awesome. So now I want to take the time and allow for partner updates, such as BOLI or OSHA, to update us on their RAC or what's going on with BOLI. And then once we've heard from the state agencies, if there are any other stakeholder or partners who want to share kind of updates, what they're doing, I'm happy to hear from those as well. So Michael, do you want to just provide any kind of small updates you might have?
Hi, yes, thank you. So again, I'm Mike Sterner with Bureau of Labor and Industries. I am within the Civil Rights Division, and I manage our Fair Housing Enforcement Unit. We have the scope of our work covers the entire state. We investigate allegations of housing discrimination, whether it's a rental or a employer provided housing or an appraisal, buying a home, selling a home, any lending, anything related to housing. So farm worker housing is just one very small part of that. We do, let's see, as of about 3 months ago, we hired several new investigators, all of whom are bilingual. They're also based in different parts of the state. We have 2 in Central Oregon and 1 in Southern Oregon and 1 person in Eugene, and I'm in Portland. So we definitely are very interested in serving the entire state. Let's see, our staff have been, our investigators also are, part of their responsibilities include outreach. So we've been trying to do a lot of outreach and plan for, you know, the coming season when it's easier to travel around and we've got more farm workers and others. So we've been doing quite a bit of that as far as getting out there to do know your rights type trainings. And we provide technical assistance. Probably a lot of you are familiar with the, well, especially if you're an employer, with the employer assistance that BOLI offers for wage an hour or ag overtime, things like that. So we will be able to provide, and we are currently able to provide technical assistance to anyone who is a housing provider. If you are concerned about compliance or anything like that, as well as their investigative function. Let's see. Yeah, we're planning some events of our own that are not necessarily focused on farm worker housing, but as fair housing in general. And let's see. Yeah, oh, and I should mention too that specifically we've been collaborating with our ACE unit, the you know, who's working on the agricultural, rolling out the agricultural overtime laws to sort of coordinate our outreach efforts. So that's the update for now from BOLI. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think Sarah had to step out for a moment, so maybe we'll wait a second for her to provide some OSHA updates. I do know that OSHA just had a meeting yesterday about masking and the mask mandate. So I know there's that, and I think they have some information on their rule advisory committee for the housing. So yeah, we'll just wait for her to return and provide that. So are there any other partners, the grower advocates, developers, community advocates, or worker advocates who want to provide any kind of updates about what you're doing or things like that? We want to take the time to hear from you if you want to share anything that's going on in your world.
I'm happy to go. This is Nicole with the Columbia Gorge Fruit Growers.
Yeah, please.
One bill that I would share is House Bill 3098. We're calling it the Farm Worker Outreach Program. It establishes the Farm Worker Outreach Program within ODA related to the Pesticide Analytical Response Center, PARC. Yes, I had to make sure my acronym was correct. So if it's not on anybody's radar, I would just put that on your radar as something that would impact farm workers. We're really excited about the bill, and especially with the -1 amendment, it did move out of committee this week, so it is headed to Ways and Means. So yeah, I would just put that one on people's radar as something that would impact farm workers, especially around pesticide use.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what it says?
Oh, sure. Yes. So the bill, and this is going off my head, so feel free, Jenny, if you have other thoughts to correct me, but the bill would establish a new farm worker outreach program within ODA. They would coordinate with PARC to sort of serve as a single point of contact for pesticide education, concerns, and any incidents that farm workers have related to pesticide use and exposure. And so really our hope was to just have one main place that had enough funding and enough workers to really be a hub for any incidents that needed reported, and then also having some educational materials created and distributed to farm workers. The -1 amendment, I got to remember, I think specifically it talks about what languages the educational materials would be in, to make sure that it's some of the common spoken languages among farm workers. And then it also included who ODA and Park will consult with regarding making the educational materials. And so it sort of specified that it would be those who represent farm workers, the farm worker representatives, pesticide users, and I think OSU or colleges. I'm not sure if it specifically said OSU. So that should give you a little bit of an idea. It's 3098.
I've posted it in the chat so people can see the piece of legislation. And yeah, Lori, please.
Oh, sorry, I didn't put it down again. I guess I was just gonna further ask is how what's seen as being the interactions with OSHA in regards to that program or proposed program.
I would have to look at my notes on the bill, but I don't believe that Oregon OSHA is included. This is through Department of Agriculture and the Pesticide Analytical Response Center.
So this is Sunny with Oregon
go ahead.
Department of Ag. I would just clarify that Park, Pesticide Analytical Response Center, is actually a conglomeration, so to speak, group effort among all of the state agencies that have a role to play in pesticide and their use. So OSHA is a member of Park. Oregon Health Authority is a member of Park. I think, let's see, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I used to coordinate Park for a hot second. Forestry might be part of Park. And so anytime there's an incident from any one of the sister agencies that comes into Park, and by incident, I mean anything that has potential to impact human or animal health or the environment. So a drift application wouldn't necessarily come into Park, but dead fish in a creek that potentially is related to a pesticide application, thank you, Tim, would come into Park. And so Tim's put in the chat the 8-member agencies. So it's OHA, ODF&W, DEQ, Forestry, OSHA, us, Fire Marshal, Poison Control Center. And then sometimes we might have to pull in another agency. But basically, if any one of those agencies receives a concern related to pesticide misuse, it comes into Park, and then Park is tasked with making sure any of the other agencies, so farm workers getting sprayed by an aerial applicator, whether it comes into OSHA or comes into ODA, would go into Park and get passed to the other agency. So in that way, OSHA would be included, I guess, is the short moral of the story of my long rambling.
Thank you, Sunny, for adding all of that I did not add. I appreciate that. You saved me.
Anytime.
Awesome. Yeah, Martha, please.
Excuse the noise in here. There's a lot of construction happening. But thanks, Nicole, for bringing this up. The Oregon Law Center had the opportunity to provide feedback, which is in the form of the -1 amendment, because along with Cocoon, because I think as originally drafted, the policy didn't indicate that farm worker serving organizations should be consulted as well. And so we thought that was important. But I guess I do have a question that was actually never answered. And so because the agency's here, I'm hoping that maybe that I can get some clarity on that. Essentially, I asked Rep. Holmes' office how he arrived, or why the bill states $1 million, and if there is any sort of costs, so like an analysis of what sort of things are covered within that $1 million that the bill is requesting.
Again, this is Sunny with ODA. I apologize. I don't know where that number came from. I haven't been the lead working on this bill, so I don't have any of that information available. I can certainly try and figure out and get back with you.
Yeah, that would be super great, Sunny. I was actually going to ask if there was anybody else within the agency that would know the answer to that question.
Yeah, let me look into that.
I would ask, I guess I'm curious, Marta, are you concerned that's like not enough money to do the work? Is it like a process concern of like, you know, what was the process to get to this number? I guess I'm kind of curious what, you know, do you think this bill needs like more funding, or I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the reason for my question, and I'll actually reference the -1 amendment, which there's a section on that we were able to add on to the bill that says the department and center shall coordinate and consult with persons representing farm workers, pesticide users, and institutions of higher education. And I think what oftentimes happens is that, you know, especially with farm worker serving organizations that have this wealth of knowledge and years of experience and expertise serving farm workers, you know, who are providing their very valuable feedback and input, that they should be compensated for that. And that is something that we did bring up to the I think representative on this, and I was wondering if there was any sort of flexibility within that 1 million to be able to provide stipends, right, for people to participate and be able to provide their very valuable feedback. So that's the reason for the question.
That's awesome, and thanks, Tim, for asking that clarification. I think, Martha, we are trying to figure that out for all of our like rulemaking advisory committees. You know, that's part of social equity within the state and a movement to be more equitable. I think Tim's group has done it some in their agency. As state agencies, we're all trying to kind of find that balance of who do we pay, how do we pay, what do we pay, to make sure that we're getting everybody's voices at the table and making it so that they can be at the table.
Awesome. Yeah, so are there any other state agencies that want to provide any kind of updates about what's going on with your agency? I'm trying to cover for Sarah until she gets back, but we can always circle back to her if we want to move on. Oh, and just like that, just like Beetlejuice, I had to say Sarah's name a number of times and she has appeared. Sarah, are you there?
I am here.
I hope everything is well. Do you want to provide lots of updates for us about OSHA?
Absolutely. Thanks for your patience, everybody. So for those of you who weren't in our meeting yesterday for COVID, it is our intention to repeal the COVID rule. If you want updates about this, go ahead and drop your name in the chat and I will add you to the email list. But also go to the rulemaking page on our website. I will go ahead and drop that hyperlink as well, and you can subscribe to email updates about rulemaking. Now, I said it was our intention to repeal the COVID rule. So what rules are still in place? Well, we've got some rules for exceptional risk industries. That would be where direct patient care is occurring. Masking is still in place. Benefits are still in place that pay the worker who has to quarantine in direct patient care. There's a few other things in place. In ag labor housing, there's actually quite a bit still in place. The suspected If there's a suspected case or a confirmed case, that occupant must be isolated and quarantined. And that's just off the top of my head. So what will this look like? I don't know. I don't know if the entire rule will be stricken. We'll just strike out and there won't be any language. I don't know if any parts of the current rule will be revisited in other rulemaking. So this is your reminder to sign up for updates, drop your email if you want. I'll add you to the list and you can join the conversation. But as for right now, we are moving very quickly with the intention that we can hopefully meet OHA's April 3rd deadline or effective date. Laurie asked, is there a deadline to submit comments? Anytime we ask for comments, we do give a deadline, but we always take your comments. So really the question is, how much time do you want to give us to review your comments? We can't stop the rulemaking process for comments that come in late, but we will always take them. We'll always save them. And if they come in literally too late after the rulemaking, we will save it and revisit it at future rulemaking. So OHA is given the April 3rd date to drop the rule. And we are trying to meet that with temporary rulemaking. You might ask, why don't you just do permanent rulemaking right now? Well, we're going to do the two of them together, but permanent rulemaking takes more than 2 weeks. So our only option right now is to pass a temporary rule repealing and then immediately begin the permanent rulemaking process, which you're all welcome to be a part of as well. Thoughts or questions for me?
I have a question for you. So when I was at the rack yesterday, I think maybe I should have paid better attention. If the rules are pulled back, is there still going to be anything in place that requires employers to provide PPE like masks or things like that? Or is it going to be pure, like, and I guess nothing's been repealed yet, but is that something that's still kind of up in the air of like, hey, you still have to provide it if people want it, or like, no, people gotta bring it in?
Great question. The consensus in the meeting yesterday was everybody wants the masking rule gone, but they were okay. The support from the group was that they supported the idea of allowing employees to still wear a mask. That might sound silly to us. I think if you're a jerk, you would never deny your employee the right to do that. But do you remember at the height of shutdown, you had a lot of people saying, get that mask off your face, don't come in, you know, you had a lot of kind of combative moments. We did talk about this yesterday, Tim. Is this something we ought to revisit in other parts of rulemaking? The number one, the ability to still wear a mask, like just protect that ability in a rule. Number two, would the employer need to provide that? I think the consensus from yesterday was employers saying, please no, it's just a burden. Number three, also there was some conversation about filtering face pieces. That would be like an N95 mask or a KN95. So under the current rule, we allow voluntary use of filtering face piece masks under the voluntary use provisions of the respiratory protection rule. I don't know if that's going to stay because there is still, even though it's voluntary, there's still some burden on the employer. Off the top of my head, I think it says they have to ensure it won't create a hazard. And that would include to the health of the person. And I don't know. So I don't know if that will stay, but it's possible that voluntary use stays. Where it would go in the rule is a very good question. Respirator masks do serve as PPE, but regular masks aren't technically PPE, personal protective equipment, because they're not filtering anything out. They're more like blocking, right? So think about your 3-year-old when they sneeze right in your face. Well, we don't really necessarily need an N95 at that moment, but we'd sure like something, whether it's just like a washcloth or a Kleenex to just block, right? So we call this source control. You isolate something with a mask, but you're not technically filtering with a cloth or a paper mask. So it's not technically PPE. Should it go in the PPE rule? Not technically respiratory protection. So anyway, there's just a conversation to be had. It's not really first aid, but yet most of us do throw our masks in with our first aid boxes, right? Like there's a lot of places this could go in the rule, maybe with a note, maybe with, I don't know. We're talking about that.
You know, I was going to ask if you've been hanging out with my kid, getting some full face sneeze action going on.
I'm hanging out with my kids and they just get right in my face and then they go, ah!
Yes. Awesome. And so I guess my question is, and maybe I'm misremembering, was there money or was there a program through OSHA or maybe even the health authority to provide free masks to employers? Am I crazy? Was that a thing?
Not that I'm aware of. The only thing I'm aware of is our masks were taken. Like we had a big stash of filtering face piece masks because we have occupational health inspectors, and they regularly go into places where there potentially could be a hazard. And so all I remember is at the start of the pandemic, turning them over because OHA and state hospitals and this and that were so low on equipment.
This is Maria Castro from OHA. We provided PPE to agricultural workers, to employers. During the thick of the pandemic, we were allocated a ton of PPE. And we continue to have a program called Protecting Oregon Farm Workers at Work on COVID-19, where we have community partners who also got PPE from us to share with agricultural workers. Is that still a thing? I'm not sure. I can ask.
Awesome. So yeah, I get it's one of those things. I was just curious, you know, it's I guess the thought in my mind is if workers still want to do that, is there a way to do that that's not a cost burden on the employer or the employee, especially you know, our really critical ag workers. And I also just want to point out, Peter had asked earlier, had asked Marta if she was talking about money for consulting on the rulemaking or ongoing money. So farm worker serving organizations are part of the mix for operations of 3098. And Marta clarified that ODA would not employ a rulemaking process, but it would be compensation to BIPOC farm worker serving organizations for consulting on setting up the program. So yeah, so awesome. Excellent. Well, do you want to talk about more stuff? Housing. Do you want to talk about the housing rack?
Of course. So, so I facilitate the Ag Labor Housing Rulemaking Advisory Committee. Little background, this committee has been meeting for years. I honestly think 6 years. We've had some employee changes, some facilitator changeover, and then of course the pandemic was the biggest barrier to making progress. We met regularly last year, and this year it is our intention to meet regularly as well. It is our intention to make progress within this rule. That means rule changes. I, though, am not going to say that we can propose by December 1 or by January 2nd or whatever. I'm not going to say that because I said that last year and it didn't happen. So where are we? We meet the last Wednesday of every month generally. This month we are not meeting because it is this for most of the state of Oregon, it is spring break, the last week of the month. And we also are pushing through at the same time this very rapid temporary rule repeal for COVID. So what that means is we will meet at the end of April, the last April of the month. It's a morning meeting, like a 9 o'clock meeting. If you're not on that list, drop an email or email me directly. And I'll put my email in the chat. I'm going to send out some language like within the next week for stakeholders to review. The language I'm going to send out is not a rule proposal, but consider it a draft of what could be a potential proposal. So this month we are looking at just a couple of issues. if I can remember off the top of my head, we're looking at translating the water testing results and posting the water testing results for workers. As you know, if your water comes from a well, you do have to test your water yearly. So we're considering requiring posting those results. I'm sorry, I said translating, but I think maybe there might be a simpler way to post those results, like some sort of symbol or something that would show that the test met the requirements or didn't meet the requirements. Let's see, what else did we want to talk about? We wanted to talk about notifying workers of the availability of space heaters. We have a requirement if there isn't heat and the temperatures dip, you have to provide space heaters. There's some concern workers aren't aware of that. We're going to be also talking about how you communicate with first responders in an emergency, and specifically, how do occupants of housing direct first responders to the site when there is an incident. So we require your address be visible from the road, but a really thorough, effective emergency response plan would ensure somehow that there's no miscommunication, that 911 can make it to the little housing site where the injured or sick worker is. So we're going to be talking about language for that. You know what? I think there's one more item, but I can't remember it. If you want to see an email of that, what I've already sent out to the group, I can send it to you. I think that's it. And then next month, so we'll discuss these items in April, and then we'll just push through more items and talk about other rule suggestions and see where we can move forward.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. All right. Are there any other partners that want to provide updates or thoughts before we move on to, let's see, what is the draft thing say? Oh yeah, Peter, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know that we're having our biennial farm worker housing conference, July 18th through the 20th in Hood River. Many of the topics that we've talked about here today will be likely discussed there as well. Typically, we get owners and managers of farm worker housing, local elected officials. We have, in the past, we've done tours of some of the community-based farm worker housing as well as on-farm housing. We're currently putting the agenda together. I want to thank OHCS for being one of our key sponsors of this conference. I'm hoping that Oregon Department of Agriculture will also jump in there as a sponsor, as they've done in the past. Just waiting to hear back. So Sunny, if you want to put in a word for it, that'd be great.
Peter, who did you send that to?
Oh, I'd have to go back and check with my folks, but I'll look and I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
And then, and certainly if there's any other state agency or other organization that would like to be a sponsor of this, we'd love to have you on board. So just wanted to put that out there. And then also just wanted to report on some of our recovery work down in Southern Oregon. A number of projects that house a large number of farm workers were partially or completely destroyed. And so we're right in the midst of redeveloping a mobile home park down there that hopefully we'll be ordering the units soon. And then we have another apartment project specifically for farm workers that we're going to start construction soon. So I just wanted to give those updates. So thank you, Tim.
Yeah, awesome. Barbara asked if you have a link. Do you want to post a link to the event and chat if you have one?
I most certainly will.
Awesome. All right. So I think the next thing we have on the agenda, and Peter kind of touched on it, is just making a little space for people here to talk about kind of the successes that you all have had with the ag worker housing tax credit. You know, whether it's developing some great community-based housing or really updating and improving on-farm housing, and kind of everything in between. Are there, I want to take a little bit of space to kind of just let people talk about that. And it does not have to be something that happened in the past year. I think we can look at kind of the life of this tax credit. But I did want to make some time if anyone wanted to kind of talk about that or highlight anything in particular. So I guess I'll open it up to see if anyone wants to take the plunge on that.
Well, I guess since it was my suggestion, maybe I'll throw out some ideas out there. Thanks, Tim. So, the farm worker tax credit program has been in place now for 30 plus years. And so, we've had an amazing amount of success with that program, but not just the farm worker tax credit. There's other programs at OHCS, their mainline housing programs, as well as some other specialty programs that have really facilitated the development of farm worker housing. And, I don't want to leave out our federal friends at HUD and USDA, who also have programs, particularly USDA, specifically for farm worker housing. So, I just think that every once in a while we need to celebrate the accomplishments. And it's been a while since we've done that in a deliberate way. And I'm thinking back probably 7 or 8 years ago during one of the renewals of the ag tax credits, where we did an event at the Capitol. And obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. But it basically was an opportunity both for the advocates, the owners of farm worker housing, growers, and legislators to kind of come together and talk about what those accomplishments looked like as far as numbers, as far as communities across the state that have been served, so that we can, celebrate those folks who are putting food on our table. So I just want to throw that. I don't specifically have an event or what it should look like, other than I think it's past due time to do something. So thanks, Tim.
Yeah, and I think that's something I hadn't thought about, and I don't think anyone had brought that up. Is if this sort of thing was done previously, like in person at the Capitol, there's obviously going to be a little bit more kind of maybe feel a little more impactful or something like that. So I think that's something we can noodle on as an agency, is if we wanted to do something like that, what would it look like? Would it be some sort of hybrid event? Would it be something at OHCS offices? So yeah, I think that's something we can maybe think about a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think what might help is, just as part of, when you send these invites out, maybe putting some links in there that you guys got all the data on all of these projects, or at least the more recent ones. And if we needed to build out the older ones, HASA is certainly willing to help you. But I think, just having some resources regularly in those invites that kind of points to these accomplishments, as well as, perhaps your running meeting notes for these meetings, so folks can quickly access that via the invites. I mean, I don't know, I look to my calendar invites for much of my information rather than having to search back through emails. And so if agendas can go in there, links to some of this information, I think that too will help us as we plan for something like this.
Awesome. Yeah, those are some good suggestions. Is there anyone else who wants to talk about this, or we can? Oh yeah, Karen, please.
Well, I was just thinking maybe a starting point for that is to maybe get a report from Martin that looks back at the use of the tax credits. We used the tax credits very successfully for Juniper Gardens, 48 farm worker units. And at that time, there was a person from a private financial advisor rather than a bank who learned about the tax credits and then worked with wealthy clients to promote the credits with them and put together a pool that sold them. So there may be other examples of innovative uses and outreach for the credit. Might be fun to have a look back.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. So yeah, we'll kind of work on that a little bit more, I think, internally of what that looks like or what kind of information we want to highlight. So awesome. All right, well, we can just keep moving right along and talk about kind of the survey I sent out, which I'm going to send it again in the chat. We've been talking for a little while now about reimagining the ag worker housing facilitation team, what it looks like, how we facilitate it, kind of what is the kind of the sorts of information people are looking for here. And so I sent out a survey. I think about 7 or 8 people have filled it out, but I want to hear from more people, or we want to hear from more people about everything from like the logistics of, do we still want monthly meetings? Do we want bi-monthly? Do we want quarterly? You know, when you come into the space, what are you looking for as kind of your primary goal? Is it you want updates about the tax credit? Is it, yes, Meg, I just posted it. It's right above your comment, but I'll post it again. And basically, you know, are you looking for more, you know, updates on policy from the various government organizations? You know, what is, you know, that sort of information, and it's going to help guide us through this process. This is not like, we're not going to just do the survey and then make some changes and say we're done. You know, we want to continue to be kind of very deliberate, solicit input from all of you. We talk about subcommittees in there. What kind of subcommittees would you want to see? Do you want to see the space facilitated by a subcommittee, like a rotating group subcommittee? So this is kind of that first chance to just get some ideas out there to us. It's totally anonymous. So you don't have to worry about anything like that. If you want to, you know, talk about whatever. And I think from there, we'll probably dedicate the next meeting, or maybe the one after that, to some just kind of deep dive conversations here with like retro board. You know, what does, you know, what are some of the kind of in the weeds processes you want to see here? I know the other big thing that I talk about, or in the survey, is a question about like community agreements. So basically, how are we going to hold ourselves in these spaces? How are we going to, you know, be respectful of each other? You know, how are we going to kind of operate? And that's something else I would ask all of you to kind of think about. You know, do you have experience using community agreements? If you don't, you know, we can talk about what those look like and bring in some of our people to kind of further work on that. Awesome. So Meg just typed in chat, the goals for FHDC are collaborative policy work, discussion, and hopefully a unanimous decision, work with agencies to support community-based housing support services and farm worker studies regarding health, housing, and education. Absolutely. This survey, we're going to run it, I'd say, for another few weeks. I really want to make sure we capture everything. So that's really good to have. I will also say the farm worker housing study is done. I think some of the final edits we made were from some really valuable input from, like, I think Lori Hafer and Karen Shawcross, who both provided some thoughts that made it into the final version of the paper or the study. It is now getting, I think because of those edits, we have to go in and translate some stuff again. But I'm fully expecting, like, hopefully by this next meeting, we can release it. And I think that's going to be that opportunity to begin to deploy, Karen, some of your ideas about, like, let's put together a subcommittee on the study, right? And let's pull out some recommendations or policy ideas from it. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, so I think this is an opportunity. We want to hear from everyone about that, from that survey. We want to make sure everyone feels heard. We want to have this be a space that everyone feels is productive, that you feel like you get something when you come to these meetings and you're taking away valuable information. So that's a really good question. I think the intention is to send it out to this group, but then fully release it at potentially a Housing Stability Council meeting. But I will double check with Chelsea. Yeah, Karen, please.
Tim, why don't you give us all a deadline for responding to the survey, and a deadline that gives you an opportunity to compile the results before the meeting that is dedicated to the discussion of it. But we all procrastinate, so a deadline would be great. Thanks.
No, I definitely will do that. I think we'll probably set it for the end of the month, then 3/31. That way I'll have a few weeks before the April meeting to go over that. Also, just so everyone is aware, I think I've told people in this group before, my wife is expecting, and we're probably like no more than 3 weeks away, probably 2 weeks away. So I do not plan on having me at the April meeting. It will still be held. I'm just not going to be the one doing it because I'm going to be on paternity leave. I'm having girl number 3, so I'm going to be certified girl dad. So yes, very exciting news for me. But yes, Karen, I'll send out a kind of a follow-up reminder about the survey and include like a deadline as well. Excellent, excellent. All right, well, I'm happy to release people a little early. I again want to thank you all for coming out today. I know for everyone during the legislative session, things are crazy. Your time is incredibly precious. So that all of you continue to show up and engage in this space, this feels very good. I'm excited to continue to work towards making this a more effective space, more collaborative, and really want to be able to continue some of the good work that has happened here since this space was created. And yeah, I'm really excited. So I will let everyone go a little bit early. I will give you all 24 minutes back. Go take a walk, drink some coffee, hang out with your pets, whatever you need to do. But again, thank you all for showing up, and I will see you all later. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Tim.